Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to my decision session on Tuesday, the 13th of May. My name's Kate Revilius. I'm Executive Member for Transport. As everyone can see, we have a large number of public participants today. We normally only have 10, but I wanted everyone to have the opportunity to have their say. So I've expanded the number of people coming to speak, but it does mean that I will make sure everyone just has 3 minutes, and I'll give you a 30-second warning before the 3 minutes is up, just so that everybody gets their chance and we get through the meeting. Right, there's no apologies for absence. I don't have any declarations of interest, and I'm going to sign the minutes from my last meeting. There we are. Yeah, thank you. So without further ado, let's move on to the public participation. What I'm going to do, if it's okay with everybody, is take the participants who are talking on the substantive item on the agenda about the Res Park first as a block, and then move on to all the other participants. So the first person on my list is Steve Bowden. Do you want to come to the chair here, and then there's, if you press the button, yeah, just here, and then there's a button in the middle to put the microphone on.
Sit down?
Do sit down, yes. And then you have 3 minutes, and would you like me to give you a 30-second?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, yes, right. Just start when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So I'm in favour of the parking scheme. Although I live on Bellevue Terrace, I'm not currently included in the map of the area. But Anne-Marie and I have had a conversation about it, and it's been an oversight. So the 3 brief points I'd like to make. Firstly, my neighbour Phil is going to talk about all the reasons why it's a good idea. And so I want to express my support for Phil, that I also think it's a good idea. My second point is about the methodology. I'm not suggesting that either of the officers that have been involved in this decision have done anything wrong. I think they've followed the methodology to the letter. But what I'm suggesting is this methodology is just not democratic. In any democratic voting system, the people who vote influence what the outcome is, whether it's voting for local councillors, whether it's voting for national politicians, whether it's voting for Scotland to leave the United Kingdom. The democratic voting system is based on the people who vote. And it appears that the recommendation here is it's the people who don't vote that are influencing the outcome. So that can't be right, can it? Can't be right. And the definition of the people who don't vote, surely they don't mind what the outcome is. There are other more derogatory terms you could use, but basically they don't mind. So that's my main point. The methodology is not correct. And my third point is about costs. If you look, as I'm sure you have done, if you look at most of the objections, they seem to be about cost. And I haven't looked in detail at the cost, but the costs quoted by the people who are objecting seem to be quite high. So where is all the money going? What is the costing? If you want to put up 3 signs on the lampposts in Bellevue Terrace, I'm very happy to do that. So the costs, I think, need to be looked at. So those are my 3 points. Thank you very much. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to say that we are looking at the methodology of how Res Park is introduced, and aware that there's confusion at the very least. So thank you. Okay, my next speaker is Jacqueline Tompkinson.
Hi, good morning. So I'm kind of in 2 minds about this scheme. I don't think the methodology has been thought out properly. I think the daily ticket scenario at £3 a day is going to leave people that are like myself, blind and disabled, vulnerable, because they're not vulnerable, isolated, and skin. It's expensive, £3 a day. For the people that are just coming 20 minutes or 2 hours or 5 hours max, my brother might come for his meal on a Wednesday, but stays 5 hours, not a full day ticket. It hasn't been thought out. It's just another way for York City Council making money. And I mean, there is some parking. There is actually on Polo Court. There's 4 spaces that are not highway, that belong to highways. So some of them could be actually allocated. I want to know if you're going to make any allocations whatsoever for people that are vulnerable or have any kind of disability or age or anything like that. You know, that's basically where I'm at, really. It's like, I do think that the scheme, the daily book thing is expensive. And it's so say, for instance, my cleaner will come at £30 a week, right? It's going to be £33 a week for her 2 hours. It's not 12 hours or 24 hours. I really just don't think you haven't thought it out properly. You just come up with some kind of formal solution, but with no actual depth of thought. Not criticising, just obviously maybe just a site that hasn't been seen. But so that's basically what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And so what I'm going to ask is officers to respond to you regarding the mitigations that we can put in place for Res Park around carers visiting and essential needs. So I believe that there are some mitigations, and I think it would be worth making sure that everybody's aware of those. So I think officers have your email address, and I'll ask them to respond to you on that. But thank you for that contribution. Next on my list is Pippa Cole. Would you like me to give you a 30-second reminder? Yeah, okay. Just go when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to attend again and speak at this meeting. Having read and carefully considered the report for today's decision session, we are very disappointed with the recommendation to take no further action at the current time, based on a low response rate.
I can't hear you a bit. Microphone.
No. Sorry, do you want to start again?
So I start again,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. So yeah, having read and carefully considered the report for today's decision session, we are very disappointed with the recommendation to take no further action at the current time, based on a low response rate, despite this already being addressed at the previous public meeting as inequitable, in view of the large number of HMO student and holiday lets in the area.
I'm sorry, I'm sat on the front row and I can't hear
it.
Okay,
I don't know
we'll just stop one moment and let's try a different microphone if we can.
Sorry.
Closer, okay.
Sorry about that. Do you want to start again?
Third time lucky, okay. So yeah, essentially we're disappointed with the decision in today's decision report not to take any further action based on the low response rate, despite this already being addressed at the previous public meeting as inequitable, in view of the large number of HMOs, and now in the knowledge that some residents didn't respond in an attempt to sabotage the process, and the proposal's not been adequately supported by local residents, on the basis that there were 11 written representations for and 13 against, although point 19 of today's report does say that after the consultation period, several further representations were received via email expressing support for the scheme. So it does appear that the majority of respondents are in favour. We remain in full support of the scheme based on the issues of safety, congestion, cleanliness and maintenance, and the inability to often park in close proximity to our property. And we do feel that the cost outweighs the benefits of the benefits outweigh the cost. It's also important to note that there are 2 further issues which have arisen since the end of the consultation period that need to be taken into account as part of today's decision session. Firstly, the significant rise in car parking costs in York City Centre, making it more likely that even more people driving into the city centre and for work and leisure will now park for free on residential streets, including those covered by this scheme, rather than paying to park in the city centre. And secondly, the planning application at the site of the York Barbican on Barbican Street. While this development is welcome and long overdue, it is of great concern that the submitted plans indicate there will be just 62 parking spaces within Q Park on Kent Street allocated to the 240 apartments in the development. This will undoubtedly result in residents of the development using the surrounding streets for additional free parking, further exacerbating the already significant problems in the area. We have noted that some of the representations against the scheme do acknowledge that there are issues with people using the area for free parking, but seem to have adopted a not in my backyard approach and appear quite happy to allow streets towards Barbican Road, who bear the brunt of the free parking, to continue to do so on the condition that it does not encroach on their less affected streets. We note the comments of non-permanent residents, including students and businesses. However, as the name of the scheme indicates, the priority here should be residents. And we note that point 32 of today's decision report cannot emphasise enough that the area is being used by commuters, and therefore, in line with the recommendation in the report, it should be implemented because the majority of respondents are in favour of the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, and apologies for the microphone not working, but thank you for
That's
coming and
okay.
giving me that perspective, and I'll take that into consideration. Thank
Thank
you. Okay, next on the list, I've got Michael Kearney.
I've got quite a loud voice, so if I'm too loud, do just let me know. I do apologise.
Just go when you're ready. Would you like me to give you a 30-second reminder?
No, it should be okay.
Right, okay.
Thanks. Having lived in the proposed Res Park area since 2008, I speak with deep links to my local community and with the best interests of me and my neighbours at the forefront of my views when I'm speaking in support of the R66 scheme. Our area of York is unique, being the only residential place on the Inner Ring Road which has unlimited free parking, resulting in our streets being swamped daily by 9 AM with city centre shoppers and commuters. This leaves local residents frequently unable to park in the area. Time, however, provides no relief, for it is even difficult during the evenings when events are on at the Barbican, when we were again used as a mass dumping ground for people unwilling to pay for local car parks. It isn't just inconvenient, it impacts our daily lives, our safety, and deprives the council of desperately needed revenue. And the situation is only going to deteriorate further with the arrival of 240 homes at the Barbican, with only 67 car parking spaces planned. Where do councillors realistically think they will park? Residents of those flats will naturally flood into the streets around Heslington Road, further exacerbating the problem. If you refuse to grant resident parking, it would also fly in the face of the council's own climate change strategy, where there are ambitious targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and private car usage by 2023. Namely, 3.1, reduce distances travelled by motorised vehicles. 3.2, increase the take-up of active travel and reduce overall car usage through alternative modes of transport, public transport and car sharing. This could easily be achieved by ending the parking free-for-all in our area. Despite the motion being passed 8 months ago, this report demonstrates officers clinging to outdated and non-statutory processes that don't serve the needs of residents, with a do-nothing recommendation despite having now completed the statutory consultation process. The officer's alternative, despite 24 written responses to the statutory consultation, is to suggest further prevarication and waste of council funds to repeat the whole process. Residents' parking would ensure that those who live here have reasonable access to park near their homes, mirroring other areas of York which have successfully implemented similar schemes, improving the quality of life, reducing traffic congestion, and encouraging more cycling and walking. As local leaders, you understand that you'll be judged on your deeds, not words. So please take heed of your own words in your climate change strategy when you tell us we will continuously adapt to change, taking bold action. Well, be bold today and adapt to the change that we need. Don't delay any further and implement the R66 scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming along and speaking. Next on my list, I've got Lucy Shaw.
Mike's still on.
It's on, yes.
I
Do you want
did
me to
my
give
own
you a
question.
30-second reminder, or are you okay?
Yes, hopefully be
Okay.
okay, but yes, please.
Sure, right, just go when you're ready.
Okay. Good morning and thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I remain supportive of the proposal to introduce Res Park and would like this opportunity to highlight the benefits of doing so. It would improve pedestrian, cyclist and road user safety as reduced number of vehicles trying to access free parking in the area, particularly at peak times, allowing others to use the space more safely. This includes Heslington Road, where double-decker buses have to try and navigate through alongside school children in the mornings and afternoons, as an example. It would improve the hygiene of the area and allow the council to fulfil basic services such as road maintenance, street and drain cleaning that have not been completed for a number of years, due in part, I guess, to non-residents not following temporary parking restrictions put in place to allow the work to be completed. A recent example of this was November last year, where all residents moved their car, the contractors turned up, and they could not fight off the people aggressively seeking those spaces. It would reduce congestion and pollution in this area as well as surrounding areas, including Fulford Road and Cemetery Road, allowing better flow of traffic and encouraging the use of park and ride. It would enable the council to hold developers to account on approved plans which boast of being positive to the climate and environment of the city by having minimal parking spaces on offer once built, as well as assurances parking provisions would be provided during constructions to not impact the community during build phase. Note, in this area, there are currently 4 student developments under construction, and then obviously the welcome proposal, apart from the parking bit, of the Barbican. It would contribute to the council in achieving both its climate and housing strategies in a sustainable way, and where these developments aren't at the cost of existing residents. Lastly, and really not my favourite, but it does provide an income to the council. In response to those who submitted objections to the proposals, my thoughts include: where residents have objected, these are generally in regards to the cost of the scheme, and think we would all agree prefer not to pay. But as previously said, the benefits to the whole community should go in part to offsetting these costs. The business objections included in the report: there's a Q Park and an NCP just around the corner, and the area is served by a number of regular buses, including park and ride, for those workers who aren't local to the area. The proposals also have waiting and loading spaces built in to allow customers to access those businesses for short periods of time. The student objections, or objection maybe, the area is served by 3 university buses that run regularly throughout the day and
30
night
seconds.
to university and the station. This area is out of sync with other student resident areas where Res Park is already in place, as well as new student developments which suggest parking is not required by having minimum or no parking provisions in their plans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to speak, and I'll take all of that into consideration. Thank you. Next on my list, I've got Philip Collins, please. Would you like a 30-second?
I should be all right, Kate.
Okay.
I'm a local resident from Bellevue Terrace. I've been there 30 odd years. And I really wanted to comment on the current car parking pressures. So I'm for the scheme because over the years, the actual problems with car parking has got worse. We know, for instance, that when the university hiked their car parking prices, they actually are telling the students to come and park, in our area. We know that the car parking prices in York have increased, and so there are shoppers and indeed the workers coming to York are parking in our area. We know on social media that there are apps out there that tell you the free parking in York are these streets, and we're very close to the wall, we're very close to the city. But I think one of the biggest impacts that I've seen is this proliferation of these developments which seem to surround us, where there is a development, there is some private parking, but it's probably not adequate. But the sort of ebb and flow of everyday use, which is people, relatives and friends and relatives coming to visit, they come and park on our street. if I've got friends or relatives coming, I can't park in their private parking. I can't use it. So it just adds to the pressures that we've got. And then we did read about the Barbican car park, which has been a disgrace for 20 odd years. Is now going to be 240 apartments. I can't believe that that isn't going to have a massive impact on this car parking pressure in this area. And I believe that it's unfair if we don't protect the residents that actually live there. I don't know if this scheme is the best one. There are plenty of other options. If I look around Europe, there's some really cracking parking schemes. I don't know if this is the best one. I know the costs can be a problem, but I think if it's on offer and this is all there is on offer, I think we do need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming to speak, and I'll take that into consideration. Thank you. Next on my list, I've got Hazel Qureshi. Would you like me to give you a 30-second reminder?
If you like, I may not even speak for that long. So
Okay, just go when you're ready.
Okay. I live in the Heslington Road, Bellevue Street area, and I made representations against the residents' parking scheme because as things stand at present, where I live, it's not needed. And it represents an unnecessary cost to residents for no particular benefit. And I realise that this is not so for everyone in the R66 area. I read Annex B and the comments of people, and I did hear some of the comments that people have just made. And it seems to me there's quite a clear geographical split in the representation, certainly in Annex B, with those living nearer the town centre in favour of the scheme and those further away, and perhaps on the right-hand side of Heslington Road up our way, against it. So I've got a lot of sympathy with people in Wellington Street, Willis Road and the other roads nearer town. But I'd like to suggest then that the implementation of residence parking could be divided so that those who want to have it can have it, and those who don't, like people in Bellevue Street, need not have it for the present time at least. I do see that this might lead to greater pressure on parking in our area, but I don't know that it will. And we don't know how the other proposed developments like the Barbican site and various buildings for student accommodation will affect us over the next couple of years. So I don't see why that situation couldn't be kept under review. And those who don't want a residence parking scheme now should not have to have one, but this could be revisited after an agreed period when we actually know how things are. And if we want a residence parking scheme, then we should be able to ask for one with 50% of the residents. I have one comment on the democracy issue. Certainly, people did understand that what was necessary to get a residence parking scheme was that 50% of residents in the streets should vote for that. And therefore, there were certainly people who did not vote on the grounds that, as far as they were concerned, registered that they did not want a scheme. So I don't think they should be insulted by suggesting that they didn't care or they, couldn't be bothered or whatever. That was their intention, was to convey that they didn't want a parking scheme by not voting for it. And if you want to change the conditions, then you need to make it absolutely clear that if people don't vote against, then that will be important. That's all right.
Thank you. Just one thing to respond to what you've said. If when the responses come back for any res park scheme, if we see a split where some streets want it and some streets don't, we certainly can consider implementing a split scheme, and we can look at the responses in that way. So just to reassure you that that's a possibility.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to talk today. Next, I've got Sarah Busby and Nick Ellison.
Please just back up. I haven't got anything sort of massively prepared.
Do you want me to give you a 30-second reminder, or are you happy?
Yes, I probably won't need it.
Just go when you're ready.
Okay. I understood, and I may be wrong, that this meeting was to decide whether or not to agree to the recommendation to drop it. So I thought it was just about to drop it or not to drop it, not to either implement it or not implement it, if you see
You're
what I
correct.
mean. Okay?
Yes, you are correct.
So we discovered rather at the 11th hour the news about this development. Okay. And I think our main point is that the consultations, whatever they consisted of, for the parking in the general area was not really conducted with full information, and still isn't, because the decision on the development, I understand, is being made on Thursday. So having discovered about the development, we did some research and we discovered that for 240 flats, there are going to be 62 allocated parking spaces. So that is apparently based on, there are two reasons given. One is an estimate that only a small proportion of residents will want to own a vehicle. And the second is that the council's planning officers view that this is quote, a car-free development would be fine. I couldn't find any evidence to support either of those assumptions, which on the face of it seem like wishful thinking. So I put together a little petition, which was very 11th hour for our street, but there are plenty of people in our street who, in principle, without knowing about the development, and are instinctively kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's very likely a bit broke now because of all the developments. And so people have changed their minds in our street, and they've changed it because of the very, very recent information. And I honestly think any consultation that's happened so far is not really very useful. And I would suggest, therefore, that we don't drop the proposal, but that we strongly consider a further consultation process. Just one more thing about the demographics of the area. It is a difficult area to canvass because there is such a higher proportion of transient population with all the students. So I don't know what your sort of, rule of thumb for thinking that responses have to meet a certain standard, but I would just urge you to take into account the demographics in terms of responses.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask the officers about the petition. Can we receive that now?
We've uploaded it.
Okay.
Yeah, we've uploaded it.
We uploaded it, and it's from Bellevue Street.
Bellevue Street.
Yep.
Bellevue Street, who have come up with a really very different understanding now that we have better information.
I mean, because people were asking lots of questions and we don't know the answer.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, next I've got Guy Hogarth. Do you want me to give you a 30-second?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Just go when you're ready.
Councillor and chair people, I've heard some great arguments actually, just whilst being sat here. And certainly got me thinking, I wasn't too aware of the new complex being built near the Barbican. It's kind of swayed me a bit, but when I first got the letter through the door, proposing the changes, I got excited, like everyone I'm sure did. But reading into it, for an individual like me, there's two of us and a lodger in the house. I think the third permit's £500. It is a substantial amount of money just from my house. So it's going to generate a colossal sum of money. And for me, I work Monday to Friday. I'm always moving my car, going to work, going to the shop and whatnot. A bit of an inconvenience. I might have to park a bit further down Wellington Street. I can't say that in 18 months I've ever had an issue where I've had to park further away than Bellevue Terrace. I do understand that could be an issue for people not as mobile, but that's just my point of view. More, the issues I think are the biggest problems are the unclear yellow lines, the kebab shop, the hairdressers, they park where they want. The builder next door, he parks on the corner on a Saturday, and in a year and a half, I've never seen a ticket. I've never seen a parking warden. So my question is, with the money I'll be paying, what am I going to be gaining? The council have said themselves there's no guarantee of it easing the parking. But I do completely appreciate with the new flats going in, it's something that maybe has to be reconsidered, like the last speaker said, a little bit further. But at the minute, I'm standing against the proposition.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in and giving that perspective, and I'll take that into account. Thank you. Next, I've got Jacqueline Christensen. Do you want me to give you a 30-second?
No, I'm fine.
Just
Thank you.
speak when you're
Yes.
ready then.
I haven't got a long speech. I have owned my home since about 1980. And the previous try that you had about 20 years ago, I voted against it and canvassed the neighbours about it, as a lot weren't aware. And so I'm in the same opinion. I'm against the scheme. I understand parking can be an issue, but I don't see why I should have to pay to park outside my own home or in the streets nearby. I can always get a parking spot. If it isn't on Wellington Street, it'll be Willis Street or Gordon Street. There's never an issue. You know, might have to go around twice, but that's fair enough. And then if you do bring it in, the cost, you know, for 1 car, 2 car, 3 car, as the previous person has said. Yeah, and factoring in the increase in council tax bills, you know, with no visible improvements to the services the council provide. So wouldn't be happy about the fees. If the permits are, you know, going to go ahead, are they going to be free of charge, like you've got them in Badger Hill, to all residents indefinitely? And is this yet another, as they say on the internet, money-making scheme for the City of York Council? And if this scheme is brought in, can 90 minutes be mandatory, as it is too short, or even 2 hours like the lady behind me suggested? Because when we get visitors, should we have to pay that an extortionate amount, you know, of money for people to visit? And then if you've got a gas engineer visiting your property, or you know, electrician because your lights have gone off, you're going to have to pay for that. They don't want to get a builder's permit costing £5. You know, that there's also people that you know, I'm in my 70s, and there's people older than me that need people to do nursing care, bring the shopping, and 10 minutes is not long enough. People want to be able to say hello. They might not have spoken to anybody for 1 day, 2 days, or whatever. And then deliveries, you know, sometimes they come at my door to give a delivery for somebody else, and they've been knocking up and down the street because if you leave a parcel outside, it'll be gone. That's it. So obviously I've said I'm not fit, and I don't qualify for a disabled badge, but I do have lots of stumbles and falls and breaks, but I don't want to be parking somewhere miles away. I want to be able to, you know, go there without paying. So that's sort of, you know, what to say. Okay. Right,
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that perspective. Okay, and then are we on to the next? Right. So that's everyone who came to speak on agenda item 5. So I'm going to go back to my list, and now there's a number of people who want to come and talk about the car parking prices. So I'm going to ask Councillor Jane Burton to come first. You want me to give you a 30-second?
I don't think I'll talk for that long. Thank you.
Okay, you go when you're ready.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Jane Burton. I'm here today as Micklegate Ward Councillor and a member and representative of the local community to present a petition from the Bishopthorpe Road traders. The traders started this petition following the very high increase in car parking charges at the local Bishopthorpe Road car park. The petition now has over 8,000 signatures, and it's estimated almost 5,000 of those signatures come from the local York area. The traders have raised the issue of the negative impact the new much higher car parking charges are having on their businesses, and wish to bring this petition to the attention of the Executive Member for Transport, yourself, and the City of York Council. The traders strongly object to the increases in car parking charges at the Bishopthorpe Road car park. I think it would be sensible now that there has been a chance to see what the impact has been on the local traders to review how current charges are impacting the businesses and consider whether the rates set accurately reflect the car park status as more of a community car park than a city centre one. In conclusion, in challenging existing charges, signatories of the petition are calling on the council to stop what they see as excessive increases and engage meaningfully with local residents, traders, and community groups to find a fairer, balanced solution. I'm happy to present this petition on behalf of the local traders, and thank you for the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton, for coming to present the petition. I'm going to respond to what you've said and the petition once I've heard from all the other people who are also speaking on this item.
Yes,
but thank you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much.
So next on the list, I have Johnny Hayes. Would you like a 30-second reminder, or are you happy?
No, thank you. It'll just make me panic.
Yeah, just go when you're ready.
I'm a local resident and a retired trader from the much-loved Bishop Road local parade of shops. I'm also a long-standing campaigner for the protection of our historic city, its natural environment, and on transport policy improvements. Our collective concerns for the traders are about some recent transport decisions, however well-intentioned, that we believe need to be urgently reviewed, hence our petition, which Councillor Burton's formally presented. This petition protests against the 500% increase in parking charges in our local car park, with over 8,079 signatures, of which 4,749 or 59% have York postcodes as of yesterday. We believe this exaggerated tariff increase may cause an existential threat to business and to a much loved street, and in the process will escalate and not reduce the problems it aims to tackle. We are requesting a formal review of this decision under the statutory guidelines, the right to challenge parking policies in the Traffic Management Act of 2004. This allows community groups and businesses to challenge parking policies through a petition to request a review to allow the petitioners to provide facts, hard evidence and data that we are sure will convince this council to think again. This huge increase in tariff came out of the blue and there's a huge shock to traders and people using the car park. According to Google, this represents the largest increase in parking charges ever in Britain. It is now at times more expensive than parking in Kensington High Street. To quote the statutory guidance, parking strategies cannot simply be about restricting parking. They need to meet the interests of road users, communities and businesses. In the inappropriate parking rules, overzealous enforcement and high parking charges drive people out of town centres, push up cost of living, harm local shops and make it harder for people to park responsibly and go about their everyday lives. This review is needed for Bishopthorpe Road, but it's just the tip of the iceberg, as there are other areas that deserve to have this decision reviewed as well. We have a right to challenge this, and we just have. And to that end, I brought a formal letter to request a formal review. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to speak. And I am listening to all of that feedback. And like I say, I'll respond at the end to everybody.
Sure.
Thank you.
Shall I just pass that on to? Thanks very much. Thank you.
So next, I've got Todd Lepage. Would you like a 30-second reminder, or are you happy?
Just about make it, I think. So thank you. Right. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak today about the 500% increase in parking charges on Bishopthorpe Road. I want to use my time to talk about impact and what the past 17 days have revealed. So let's begin with this question: who has actually benefited? Number one, tourists, now using Bishopthorpe Road as a long stay overflow for city centre parking. Number two, wealthier drivers, as shown by the much higher value vehicles now regularly parked there. And number three, large out-of-town retailers and supermarkets who continue to offer free parking and are now seeing more of our customers. And so who is being left behind? It's the people who can least afford it. Lower income residents, elderly people, and those with mobility issues, plus anyone who depends on our local pharmacy, pregnant women, families with small children, and of course, those not well served by public transport. The ripple effect goes far beyond just convenience, though. Local employees priced out of legal parking are now risking tickets by parking in nearby residential streets, as it's now cheaper to have 1 or 2 parking tickets per week. Those same streets are filling up fast, with drivers saying, "I'll only just be a minute." Meanwhile, air quality is declining as residents now drive further to do their shopping. And what message does this send? It says loud and clear, we don't believe this community deserves a car park. We've heard reports in the press saying that congestion is throttling businesses, but let me be clear, in 2.5 years of running my business, I've never had a late delivery, let alone one caused by congestion. But I have dealt with repeated road closures, a 150% increase in business rates, and a constant rise in staff and operational costs. And yet the single most damaging long-term threat to my business has come from this council's own decision, justified as a way to raise revenue and reduce traffic. But forgive me, but I really struggle to understand how both can be true. And yet, excuse me. So in your own economic development strategy, it promises to help local businesses thrive. But tell me, how does taking 20% of our revenue help us thrive? That's 20%. It's not just a statistic. It's the difference between keeping staff or cutting hours, staying open or shutting our doors. For those of us who put our homes on the line to support our shops, 20% is the difference between stability and personal financial ruin. After years of hard work, many of us were finally starting to see growth. But since April 26th, that progress has stalled and reversed. Since that date, my shop is now down 6% year on year. Just this last weekend, normally my busiest of the year, we were down 22%. Other businesses are suffering too. Thomas the Baker's, for example, is down over 200 transactions per week. They've already been cutting staff hours, and so far the person most affected, a single mother with 2 children. The Good Food Shop, their growth is completely stalled, and there's many, many more examples should you wish to ask. I would just like to quickly close by asking that these charges be formally reviewed and reset to a reasonable and sustainable level that benefits every stakeholder. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to speak. Thank you. I've got Joe Nasson next. Do you want a 30-second reminder, or are you?
Should be okay, thank you. My name is Joe Nasson. I'm a trader on Bishopthorpe Road, and I started this position presented today in objection to the over 500% tariff rise in car park charges at the Bishopthorpe Road Shoppers Car Park that came into effect on the 26th of April. I'm not a member of the pro-car lobby, and I've spoken to many people who have signed the petition who are worried about the health of the Bishop Road shops and not a pro-car agenda. I live a sustainable life. I'm a Green Party member. I cycle to work. I co-own the Bishop Way, which is a low-waste, sustainable produce shop. I am not a member of the pro-car lobby. The most recent survey of the street, which was commissioned by the traders and not the council, showed that 80% of shoppers actually travel to Bishopthorpe Road sustainably, even with the low car park charges. So the shoppers are already doing their bit for sustainability, and they will be penalised if shops close. Of the remaining 20%, and that we are losing a large proportion of them, for the council to suggest that only 20% of shoppers use the car park is offensive. Can anyone in this room take a 20% pay cut? I cannot. The suggestion that we're exaggerating our drop in takings after only 2 weeks without even asking us, I think is wrong and unfair. We've been told we're being listened to and that what is being put in place will be reviewed, but we've not been asked for any feedback or any contribution to that information. There's also a suggestion that us on Bishop Road are elitist. This is a lazy culture war stoking suggestion. The traders are not rich. We work in our shops. I'll be working in the Bishop Way today. I have a second job. In fact, the council's raising of the car park charges is really elitist. It penalises people on lower income households who can no longer afford to shop on Bishop Road. It will lead to job losses for those on low incomes. Take a look at the small car park, the expensive SUVs that now park there. Surely an unintended consequence that the council have supported the actual elite, making their parking of SUVs and 4x4s nice and easy. I agree that traffic congestion, air pollution and emissions need to be reduced. And this needs to be done sustainably in a way that supports local businesses and not causes them to close. We have a right to challenge these parking policies under the Traffic Management Act, as Johnny Hayes has said, and we are simply asking the council to take a more considered and sustainable approach. Find out which areas across York, not just our area, that need to be improved with buses and better cycle parking provision. Prioritise investment in those areas over, say, 3 or 4 years, addressing those most in need first. Shape the budget around that and raise car parking charges gradually to suit. People are more likely to change how they travel locally with gradual changes rather than what's happening now, being driven out to out-of-town retail areas. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ruth Phillips. Hello, do you want a 30-second reminder?
Yes, please. I shouldn't get there, but you never know. Hi, my name is Ruth Phillips and I'm the co-owner of the Good Food Shop on Bishopthorpe Road. I'm here today on behalf of my own business, the other 35 small independent traders on the street and the 150 staff members we collectively employ in the community within which we serve. Do not underestimate the impact this poor decision has had on the mental health of the traders and the people working on the street. Traders are concerned for the future viability of their businesses and considerations regarding closures and redundancies are discussions that are already being had. Personally, our business was in growth prior to this changes coming into force. However, we are no longer in growth and as such, some difficult decisions may need to be had. I would like to raise the significant lack of consultation undertaken with businesses and local residents prior to the 500% increase in car parking charges coming into force. A consultation process would have assisted the City of York Council in their understanding of the demographics of the car park users and gain valuable feedback to make an informed and measured decision. I would firstly like to highlight the extensive consultation the City of York Council referred to that was undertaken into regard to the car parking charges. Only 612 responses to one loaded question on car parking and is not, in our view, extensive. Only 330 people supported the car parking charges, on which basis you have changed the car parking prices across the city. Only 37 businesses across the city responded to this survey, of which only 24% supported the increases. Bishopthorpe Road traders were not provided with this consultation. It is also interesting that the qualitative data you collected from undertaking face-to-face sessions with 61 people, whereby only 13% supported the car parking increases, has been omitted from your overall figures. I'd secondly like to highlight the equalities impact assessment undertaken in respect of the car parking price increase on Bishopthorpe Road. This document clearly identifies the potential negative impact of the increased charges on people accessing the shops, the pharmacy, baby groups and churches, and the lack of public transport options in the area, without offering solutions as to how these issues may be mitigated against. It also highlights a gap in knowledge that no detailed consultation was undertaken for users and areas around the car park. In this document, York Council accepts the potential for adverse impact on those with protected characteristics. However, the charges were still brought into effect. It is also unclear as to whether councillors were provided with this equalities impact assessment for the full council meeting, where the decision was taken place, which may have allowed councillors to make a more informed decision. We urge the council to meaningfully consult with businesses and residents to understand the impact issues prior to making decisions such as car park price increases now and in the future. This would have mitigated against the risk of the 800-strong petition, the commitments of the right to challenge parking policies review, and the stress that 35 traders have faced over the past few weeks. We feel that the current car parking charges are unfair, disproportionate and unreasonable for a shopper's community car park and need changing imminently without delay. Thank you for the time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think one more person, Heather Walsh. You want a 30-second?
Yes, please. Yeah. So I'm born and bred in York, worker, parent, council taxpayer. I like to shop locally, socialise locally and work locally. I'm dismayed and disgusted at the way the huge price increases for parking have been levied in Bishopthorpe Road car park, but other areas of the city too, without any meaningful consultation, consideration or mitigation of negative impacts, and without due and proper notice. Bishopthorpe Road is my local shopping area and I visit there at least 4 or 5 times every week for food shopping, social meetups, hair appointments, wellbeing appointments, as well as for quick visits to the town centre for day-to-day business, avoiding the need to drive into the heart of the city. I do use park and ride, I do cycle, but I also need to be able to use my car too. The cost of parking will now prohibit me from using the hairdresser service I've used for over 20 years, from using the restaurants and bars that would usually be my go-to venues. It's just unaffordable, even with a Minster badge, which in itself is prohibitive and should be cost-free to residents anyway. I'll now be forced to do more of my regular shopping online using the bypass to cross the city or go through the city to reach the bigger supermarkets that have adequate parking. To add insult to injury, the removal of free parking after 6 o'clock will now deter me and my family from using Bishopthorpe Road food and drink outlets and local entertainment venues. And why are we being penalised even more on Fridays and Saturdays? At the moment, I can't see there's been any consideration to the adverse effects highlighted in the very basic EIA that was done, and would like to ask why not. Bishopthorpe Road is a shining example of a thriving community of independent shops. And one of the things which has helped to support this was the cheap and accessible car park with a 3-hour maximum stay, creating a good turnover as shoppers. Every shop unit is filled with useful, reliable and creative businesses, and the street bustles with people spending their money supporting those businesses, using the local park, building good social connections and making a good community spirit. In contrast to the city centre, with Coney Street now a shadow of its former self, and the rest of the city following suit, at least in part due to the cost of reaching it in the first place. We're fed up of being done unto by the very organisation who is supposed to represent our views and wishes as tax-paying citizens on how we want our city to be run and how we want to be able to live, being able to make choices according to our needs as well as being considerate to our environment. High costs like these bear no impact for the wealthy. They impact the average working person, the elderly, those with physical and mental impairment that sit outside of the criteria for a blue badge, of which I'm sure there are many. York has always been a living, working city, not just a tourist attraction and a hen or stag destination. Please listen to those of us that live here. We are the lifeblood of local businesses and deserve better.
Thank you. Thank you. So I believe that is everyone who registered to speak. Just checking. It is, yeah. I'd like to thank everyone who's come to speak today on both the agenda item and on the car parking charges. I'm just going to respond to the people who've come to speak about the car parking charges before moving on to the next agenda item. So I'd like to thank Councillor Burton for presenting the petition and for traders for coming to speak about that petition and to give your perspectives today on the charges. And I really recognise the strength of feeling around the increased parking prices at Bishy Road and other places in the city. And I think the petition celebrates the strength of support for local independent businesses, and I really recognise that. We'll acknowledge receipt of this petition within 5 working days and we'll inform the organiser of the petition when they can expect to hear from us again and what process will be followed. But in the meantime, I can confirm that we've been listening to all the concerns raised. I've had many, many emails, as I'm sure you're aware, and people talking to me. And we are listening to those concerns that are raised by both traders and residents. And together with the council leader and local ward councillors, we have met with traders and we will continue to meet with traders to engage on this. Following the feedback we've had so far, we are reviewing the budget decisions that are affecting the parking charges, not just at Bishy Road, but elsewhere in the city too, to make sure that we have a consistent, balanced and fair approach. The pricing model that was agreed as part of the budget aimed to raise revenue from car parking and encourage people to travel into the city via other means to reduce traffic congestion in line with the aims of our transport strategy. And it pegged the price of the first 2 hours of parking to be slightly more expensive than a return family bus ticket to encourage people to use the bus. However, we recognise that some areas of the city that have previously had much lower parking charges, the rise that's occurred there has been felt too much too soon and hasn't given the businesses sufficient time to adapt to the city's approach of reducing congestion. So we are recognising that. As a result, we're reviewing our parking prices model and it's given us the opportunity to iron out some of the inconsistencies and propose a more consistent and pragmatic decision to lighten the impact of some of those previous increases. Officers are now assessing the budgetary impact of any potential changes and looking at how we would address any shortfall in the budget if those changes were to come into place. We'll be meeting with local high street traders later this week and next in various different areas of the city to discuss possible options around amendments and to gather some feedback on that and look at the process of how those changes will be implemented. We've listened to what traders are saying to us and local residents are saying to us, and we're acting on this. But I do want to be clear that we won't be making individualised, localised arrangements around parking. We want that's previously perhaps created an uneven playing field, having very different prices all over the city. And we want to move towards phasing that out and having a more consistent approach. And the urban core of our city is a special place, and one where we want people to be given the option to use clean, reliable and affordable public transport, and where all those modes of transport flourish and people have real choice, and to free up the road space for those that really need to drive and to use the road in that way. And as the city's population grows significantly through new house building in the coming years, we can't just do nothing about car parking, but we recognise that what we've done currently was too fast for local businesses to adapt. So I just want to reassure you on that, and we will be continuing to engage, and we really genuinely want to find a solution and work with local businesses and residents. So very much appreciate everybody who's come to speak today, and we will continue to engage. Thank you. If anybody wants to leave at this point, you're welcome to do so before we move on to the next agenda item. Sorry, the next agenda item is the Res Park item. So I'll be moving on to that next. Okay, so now I come to item number 5, which is the consideration of the representations received to the formal consultation to implement residence parking and limited waiting restrictions in the Heslington Road area, advertised as R66 Wellington Street. Anne-Marie, are you introducing this one?
No,
or James, you're introducing it. Could
off.
you introduce yourselves to everyone first? Thank you.
So I'm James Gilchrist. I'm the Director for Environment, Transport and Planning here at the council. So back in October last year, you determined, following a petition, that we should progress to formal consultation. So this report updates on the statutory consultation, which is the legal process of implementing restrictions. I think what I'll do before I go into the detail is just respond to some of the questions that have come up from members of the public. So a blue badge does provide you with free parking in a Res Park area, and we also offer free attendance permits for carers in Res Park areas. There is a charge for residents to park in a residence parking zone, and that price escalates based on the number of cars you have, etc. But the standard price is £115 a year, or 32 pence per day. The Badger Hill permit was referenced, and that was a Res Park scheme funded through the university's development of the campus, and a planning obligation that they would fund that through the planning process for a number of years. That's now expired and is under review, and we'll be consulting with those residents around Badger Hill very shortly on the future of that scheme. Turning to the decision and the consultation process, I think it's important to stress that the consultation and your decision is not a referendum process. As the legal implications make clear, once advertised, the legal duty of the traffic authority and your role as exec member is to consider all the duly made objections, and that's set out in paragraph 29. In order to put those objections into context, it's important to also report the support for the scheme, which we've done, and officers are guided by those response rates and the level of support. And that's how we try to put those comments into context. I think what might be useful, I think just to stress, your role today is to look at those objections and decide the next steps forward. We have published Annex F as a supplementary agenda item, and it might be useful if Anne-Marie just clarifies what Annex F is. And also we can always, when we've advertised something, go for a lesser restriction. We can't go for a greater restriction. So there may be ways to allow short stay parking, as some of the people have requested, and it also could be applied to part of the area and not the full extent. So there are options for us to look at in terms of that. Recognising some of the comments that have been made through the consultation and at today's session, what we've provided is an option to extend the consultation to ensure everybody's had a chance to respond, and in effect extend the consultation for another 21 days. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Anne-Marie, and just clarify what Annex F is.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Howarth, Traffic Projects Officer. Annex F is just the extra representations received once the report was published, so it was then in the public domain for viewing. There was 2 in support and 1 in objection. That was received before the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you both, and thanks for the work that's gone into writing this report and in doing the previous consultations. And I just want to confirm that I have received those written statements. One is from the ward councillor, Councillor Whitcroft, and then there was 3 residents, which you've mentioned, who their statements are in Annex F. So I've taken those into consideration, as well as all the people that I've heard from today with this. I think it's interesting, in my view, the process has possibly been confusing for people, and that's clear. When we look at the informal consultation that was carried out in January 2024, there was 116 responses out of the 485 that were sent out. That is less than the 50% that officers would normally look for to feel like there was support in an area. But as James Gilchrist has explained, that 50% is a guideline rather than a rule. So at that point in time, there were 72 people who were in favour and 44 against. And so I made the decision that we should continue to statutory consultation. I think perhaps what hasn't been clear to residents is that the informal consultation was only informal. The statutory consultation is the one where we have to take full notice of what people feed back to us. And those representations that were made during the informal consultation don't count within the statutory one. People have to respond again in the statutory one. And I think, to me, it's probably clear, given that we had 116 responses in the informal consultation, but only 24 in the statutory consultation, there was probably a large number of people who didn't realise that they needed to respond again when the statutory consultation came around in November. And I've certainly subsequently had a number of residents get in touch with myself and with officers to say that they didn't realise they needed to respond to the statutory consultation, that they'd assumed that their first response would be the one that would be taken into account. And some people claimed that they hadn't received the consultation at all. So again, there's obviously been a little bit of an issue there about making sure, because it came just before Christmas, it's sometimes easy, these things get swept into recycling, but equally there may have been certain properties that didn't get it. So we need to look at that. Personally, I don't think it's possible to really draw any firm conclusions from 24 responses. That doesn't tell me what the area thinks about whether res parks should be introduced or not. And given the difference between the first informal consultation and the number of responses there and the second consultation with the fewer responses, I feel like there has been a misunderstanding. And I think, to be fair to residents, it's important that we enable people to have their say and to try and get that strength of feeling from the area, whichever way it is. I don't know how people feel, and I'm not trying to push the result in one way or the other, but it does seem like there's been confusion, and I would like to give residents the opportunity to give us your view on whether you'd like Res Park or not. So with that in mind, I am going to go with option 2, which is to extend the statutory consultation period by a further 21 days. I just want to be clear that the options that were in front of me today were either to take no further action and remove this area from the resident parking list, or to extend the statutory consultation period. I didn't have the option of approving Res Park at this point because the statutory consultation results that we have would not suggest that that was a good idea. And so it wasn't an option for me to do that. So I just want to be clear that I couldn't do that, but what I can do is just make sure that we capture everyone's voices from the area. So I'm going to go with extending the statutory consultation period by a further 21 days. Anyone who has already responded to the statutory consultation back in November does not need to respond again at this point. Anyone who hasn't responded does need to respond if they have a strong view either way. So what I'm going to suggest is that the letter that goes out to residents and businesses makes it very clear that people need to respond to this consultation, and that the informal consultation results won't be included in the final assessment of whether the area wants Res Park or not. And certainly I will work with ward councillors as well to make sure that we try and raise awareness locally that this consultation is the one that everybody needs to respond to if they have a strong view. And then we'll try our best as soon as possible to bring this back to a decision session so that we can enact whatever it is that residents tell us they want. And as officers have said in the consultation feedback, please do state if you feel like there is a need for a lesser restriction, such as a greater availability of the amount of free parking time or certain streets not included in it, because that can be taken into consideration at this stage, and we can really try to produce a scheme that provides what residents need and want from it, if that's what comes back to us. So please give that detail in your responses. And really thank you all for coming today, and sorry that it has been a long and drawn out process, and I hope we can make this work for everybody. Thank you. Yeah. Anne-Marie, do you want to just explain what will happen in terms of the letter?
So we will have to produce the consultation documents again, but this time we will aim to hand deliver them so we can guarantee that every resident will receive the information.
Yeah, just 1 minute. Okay, so let's just go through the process. So the letters will be hand delivered. Anne-Marie, can you give us an indication of when we might be delivering those letters?
Due to staff leave, it's not looking likely until the beginning of next month.
Okay, so the beginning of June, you can expect to have a letter coming through. And when that letter arrives, there'll be a 21-day period to respond to the consultation. And I will work with ward councillors to try and make sure that everybody in the area is aware that that's the final consultation. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.